Hey, this is Jessie, and I'm going to show you how to build a basic responsive layout using Flexbox with CSS. So this is the website that we're going to be building, and you can see it's just going to respond as we resize the browser. And I'm going to do another video with the same project that is going to include how to make it a little bit prettier, how to get some hovers on this menu, how to get this menu to collapse to a drop bar, and get some JavaScript going in there. But for now, this is just how to get a basic layout with Flexbox. And I'm going to show you first some of the tools that we're going to be using. So if you don't have these, I would recommend that you get these downloaded because you're going to need them. We're going to be using the live Sass compiler. And if you don't have Sass downloaded, that's another thing. You're going to want to install Sass. We're going to be using live server. And we're going to be using a CSS reset. You can really use any CSS reset you like. I like this one mostly because if I Google CSS reset, it's the first one that pops up. And if that seems kind of silly, it's not just because it's convenient, it's because if something else pops up, it's going to make me think that I need to revisit my CSS reset and check out what's changed in CSS. So there's a little bit of strategy behind. I don't want to get outdated on the technology I'm using. I don't want to bookmark something and get so comfortable in using it that I just keep using it because it's what I've always used. If something changes, I want to know. So currently, this is the one that I'm using. It does everything that I need it to do. And right now, I just have a HTML file called layout positioning, and I have an extension downloaded called HTML5 template. And if I type in HTML5 or boilerplate, it's just going to pop in this info for me. And I do recommend that. You can also just Google an HTML5 template and copy it in there if you prefer. So we can call the title anything we want. Site, right? Very, very official. And I'm going to just copy this. Call this new file, reset.css. Paste that in there. And then make sure to link that. And then I'll copy and paste that and link styles.css, which I still have to create. But this is where Sass comes in. If you have Sass installed, new file, styles that we want to create an SCSS file. You can see my little icon turn to the S because we're going to be developing in Sass. At this point, we are going to want to hit this little, this is where the live compiler and the live server come in. We're going to want to watch Sass, and we're going to want to go live. There wasn't an index page. If you use index.html, it'll open that up directly, but I didn't have an index.html, so it needed to go to layout positioning. And what you'll see happens is, let me just set this up so that, because I have live server set up, I know I'm doing this on kind of a small screen. Switch these. You can see that it's just going to automatically update as I make changes, which is really nice. So I'm going to close these. I'm also going to have this project uploaded to GitHub so that you guys can download it if you want or view the code. So I can close that. Since we're going to be using Flexbox, I'll also have a link to this. Is CSS Tricks, and it's a guide to Flexbox. And one of the things I wanted to show you guys is it really helps with Flexbox to always consider that with our positioning, we're basing our positioning on a parent container, and everything inside it is relative to the parent. So container, items, container, items. No matter what you do in Flex, it's all based on the items inside the parent. You can see the start, the end, there's the container. And this is what makes it so easy to say, center things in Flex, which is what solved a huge problem that developers have been having with CSS forever and makes it a really wonderful tool. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to call this layout positioning because the title will just continue to bug me. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make this responsive navbar that I have. And you'll see that it resizes when I move it, but these guys stay over here and this guy stays over here. So the first thing I want a div that's going to wrap around the entire body of the website. So I'm going to call this class equals body container. And then checking my notes. So we want to use the nav elements so that any like screen readers or anything know that this is the navigation bar. It's important to make sure our HTML is semantic and we're using the appropriate tags whenever we can. We're going to have class equals nav logo. And we'll just type logo in here. That's going to be our little placeholder logo. And I think the mistake that a lot of people make right here is they would go, I'm just going to create these really quick. I think I changed this to bottoms. There we go. Okay, so the reason that this is a mistake is because I'm going to want this to be a separate Flexbox of its own so that these guys can spread out on their own. And you'll see what I mean when I've got it. So essentially, I want these guys to be, let's go over here. So you see how these guys are separated, but then these guys are also spaced out on their own. It means that these guys are wrapped in a separate container. And if we go to inspect, you'll be able to see that. Potentially. There we go. So you can see that we've got logo in one box, and then the nav categories in another box. And then the nav categories are each an individual element within their container. And that's what helps them stay spaced out appropriately and realign themselves when the browser is moving, but not break. So I'm going to show you how that's done. And it's much easier than you would think. It's really easy. The first thing we want to do is create a div that we're just going to wrap around our elements, and I'm going to call that nav categories. And then I want to call each of my individual items in here. I like them to be separated out like this. Just like to keep things really organized and clean so that it's easy to understand. Those individual nav category. There we go. Okay, let's get to writing some actual Sass. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is call navigation bar. And I'm going to assume that you know all of these dot and pound for class and ID. I don't tend to use ID a lot unless I have a specific reason to. I just have a preference for using class. I think it's because I like to apply styles to a lot of elements whenever possible. So we're just going to set this to display flex. And you can see it's already changing things here. Sorry about that, my screen is lagging. Flex direction is going to be row. Now, when we look at the display property in CSS, there are like, there are a lot of options when it comes to display, and we're just going to take a look at that property really quick. And I'll talk more about this because it's a lot more complicated than just display flex, right? We're not going to go over it in detail because this is really about doing Flexbox this time. But I want to show you just some of the property values. So you can see property values include inline, block, contents, flex, grid, inline block, inline flex, inline grid, inline table. So the display property does a lot of things, and setting it to flex and setting it to grid are almost like setting your element to use like a completely different technology. It's not really a different technology, but it's like a different type of CSS because flex is like its own element almost. You can do a whole bunch of different things with flex that you can't do with any other CSS. And you can do a whole bunch of different things with grid that you can't do with any other CSS. And mastering Flexbox and mastering grid are like whole beasts of their own. So it's almost like these two things are like turning on a whole new portion of CSS, where inline, or we're setting it to block, a block element just, it starts on a new line. It takes up the whole width, you know? So it's almost like the display property has like this secret button inside it that lets you turn on whole new elements of CSS. So I would say that the few things that I would be really aware of when you're using display is block elements and inline block elements. So a block element is an element that takes up a whole line. An inline block element is an element that will stay on the same line. So a span is going to stay on the same line. If you have multiple spans, you're going to have lines of text that all bump up against each other. But a paragraph is going to go down a line because that's a block level element, and then span is an inline block element. Okay, and knowing the inherent property of these elements can help you choose which tag you need to use. So I wouldn't go in and change I wouldn't change a span to a block level element. I would switch from using a span to a paragraph, but a div is naturally a block level element. And sometimes you want multiple divs on the same line. And if you're not using Flex, which will put multiple divs on the same line, then you might want to change your divs to inline block, which will bump them up to the same line. So it's just things like that to be aware of, but we'll talk more about this another time. So it's a complicated topic. Anyway, back to this. Okay. So we're setting our display to flex, and this is opening up like a whole new world of technology for us. We're using Flexbox, and we're going to set the flex direction to row. We have multiple options for flex direction. If I go back in here and go flex direction, see if we can get that to pop up. There we go. You see I've got column, column reverse, row, row reverse. If I say column reverse, you'll see that it's going to switch things around, and now my logo's on the bottom. So knowing what these do can change things. It can change how you're ordering things even without JavaScript, which is really important if you want to make a really quick switch to things that aren't sorted, say, by your database. Okay, so we're going to use justify content and center. And look at that. One of the hardest things that people have so much trouble with is centering divs, and we've just done it. So, something I'd like people to note is there is a standard navbar height. Now, you don't have to use this, but most like WordPress or Bootstrap are going to be using about this height. If not this height, then about this height. Most of them are going to be using this. So 60, see, Material Design is using it. A lot of them use 64 pixels. So we're going to say we want our height to be 64 pixels for our navbar because it's a really good one. You can vary. There are always times to break rules. But if you're not sure what your height should be and you're just winging it, it should probably be 64 pixels. And at this point, since we've set our height, let's go in and inspect this. Let's see, we've got body container, navigation bar. We've got a height set in here. We can do align items center, and this is going to allow us to move. You can see logo is now moved to the center. This is because these guys here still need their Flexbox adjusted. And you're going to get to see kind of the magic of what the second Flexbox is going to do for us here in a second. So I want to make sure though that my width is 100 view width, and VW just means view width. It means the width of the view that you are viewing your website. So whether it be cell phone, whether it be a tablet, whatever it is, we're going to view it at 100. Okay. And we're going to use, I'm actually going to use, I'm going to switch the justify content here, and I'm going to use space between. And this is going to give us that separation. I wanted to show you the center because a lot of people want to get things centered, and I forgot to change it afterward. Okay, so I want to add some padding because you can see these are butted up against the edges here. Now, when you're setting the padding property, you can do like adding top 0 pixels, adding left 10 pixels. It gets really tedious, so we can also just do padding 0 pixels, 10 pixels, 0 pixels, 10 pixels. And a good way to remember what these numbers mean is that it's going clockwise. So if you just imagine a clock, it's going to go 12 o'clock, but 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Okay, so top, right, bottom, left, right? So that's an easy way to remember how you're setting your padding. We're just going to go around the clock and set them. And this is another good time to talk about what makes Sass so wonderful. Okay, so let's just say we've set this padding and we want our 10 pixels here, and maybe we want to change it to 20. Now, we're like, yeah, I want 20 pixels here. And now I think I'm going to change it back to 10. And it's getting tedious, right? Changing it all that back and forth. So we're going to set a variable. It's really easy. We're just going to call it base padding 10 pixels. Now, if you only have this in here once, it's probably not that big a deal to change it. But if you're using a 10 pixel base padding on everything in your site, like you have multiple elements with a 10 pixel base padding, then it might get kind of old to set it over and over and over, especially if you change it and then you have to go and change it in your entire style. So this lets us go in and we can say 50. Look at that, just changed them all. Perfect, see? Now, one of the things you might notice here is that it's pushing this off the screen. And this is really frustrating for a lot of people and they don't know how to fix it. And I'm gonna show you a little fix. So what's actually happening here is we have this set for 100 view width, right? The width is 100% of the view, but we're adding 10 pixels from the base padding to each side, which means that there's now 20 pixels more than the view width. And if you don't know what's happening, it's really confusing to understand why is this going over the screen? I set it to this and then I added the padding. It should be like pushing it in, right? And you would be right. That's what you'd expect to happen. But this is one of the things that frustrates a lot of people because they don't understand why it's going off the screen. So here's a little trick. It's called box sizing. And you just set it to border box. And it's going to do that math and push it back in the screen for you. So there's your CSS trick. Made the whole video worth watching. You're welcome. Okay, let's get into our nav categories because we don't want these to be vertical. At least right now, we are going to be using this Flexbox row/column to be making it so that when we click on our drop bar, it's going to switch the Flexbox to column. So that just a little tip. Anyway, I know it's so exciting. You're like, this is the most boring thing ever. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, we got nav categories. Let me make sure I spelled it right. Nav categories. There we go. Okay, we're going to set their display to flex and their flex direction to row. Look at that. Isn't that nice? They're all on the same row now. It was so easy. Okay, inside that, we're going to do dot individual nav category. And we're going to add padding to these guys and 0 pixels. We're going to add face padding. We want this to be consistent in the whole site because I can tell you as a designer, there are people in quality assurance who will go through and measure the pixels between things and come after you as the developer if you don't have your padding correct. Get this. I don't know if I have that name quite right. Oh, got one too many properties in here. I'm breaking the CSS, guys. Okay, there we go. Look at that. It's all spaced out. It collapses when we move it. Isn't it magic? Oh, I love seeing a Flexbox work. Okay, we're also going to add, because we've added padding to this. Do you remember what happens? Yeah, it's doing bad math. Okay, we're gonna add this, and we're just gonna make sure that it's fixing any bad math that's happening because we want everything to stay accurate. So we're adding our border box. Generally speaking, anytime I add padding to something, I add box sizing, border box, just to make sure, even if it looks okay, there's a good chance that there's some bad math happening in there. That about does it for the Navbar. Look at that magic. Don't you feel accomplished? You gotta feel pretty good about yourself right now. Okay, let's get going. We're gonna do, you see, we've got this whole beautiful responsive category to do right in here, right? Okay, let's get on it. Now, I do actually want to show you something really quick, okay? We've been writing these styles in SCSS, okay? And you can see we're using .css because our live Sass compiler is constantly updating this file, styles.css. Okay, we haven't looked at it yet though. You can see we've written 21 lines of code, including 2 spaces, okay? Let's take a look at what magic has happened for us. We have 36 lines of code over here. We've got all of this browser compatibility stuff happening. Everything's broken down nicely. All of the padding is listed out. So this is the primary reason that we are using Sass, because it does all of this stuff for us. And just in case you were wondering, in case you were like, why am I going through all of this? This is why you're going through all of this. Isn't it beautiful? Okay. We need to continue on. Okay, and we're going to make our category container. So remember, with Flexbox, it's all about the containers, right? So we need a div, and we're going to call this class category container. Close. Now, you might have seen this coming, maybe, but we have 2 different Flexboxes happening here, right? So we've got our container, we've got our Flexbox here, and this is another Flexbox, and we're using the Flexbox for centering. So you might have seen this coming, but this is the closed container and this is the accessories container. So think about that when you're building your Flexboxes, right? we have a container here, and then we have a container here. Everything is getting like compartmentalized, and it's kind of similar to React in that way, breaking things down into components. With Flexbox and with CSS in general, it's really good to break things down into like containers that are holding things, and it makes things easier to manipulate in that sense. So let's go back into here. Category close. And then we're going to do accessories. Okay. And then inside here, we're going to do class equals category. And inside our category, we're going to do div class equals category header. And you're going to get why. I told you, it's all about having everything in your containers properly, right? And then inside that header, we're going to have h1 class equals tops. Call that one tops. And then we're going to add a second class here, and we're going to call that category tops. And then we're just going to copy this. And I just want to give this some space so that you can actually see what's happening. This is going to be bottoms. Oh, this actually needs to be title. Title. So the reason this is going to be titles is because later, not in this video, but later, we're going to end up calling this class to change all of these, the font and styling. So bottoms. And then we can use the same one in here and call it accessories. Accessories. Okay. I'm actually going to throw in something here. So a little okay. So this is just going to be like a little bonus thing. So you can see that these are all like not cased properly. And we're going to fix that using CSS. And the reason that I'm throwing this in here is because it's very helpful if you want to make a quick change to your website, especially to like your headers or anything. A lot of people will do like upcasing or downcasing as a stylistic choice, specifically for titles, right? Logos, sometimes even, I don't love this one, but body text, they'll just do it all downcase. So I want to show you how you can do this via styling so that you don't actually have to go into your HTML and make the choice and have to change it all, because that's really tedious. So we can do that during our styling and it makes things much easier. So let's see. Okay, we're going to do category container. And we're going to add our padding, and it's just going to be the same padding we have before with our box sizes. So I'm just going to copy this because we want this to be consistent with the rest of our website, right? Right. I know you agree. You guys don't even know the kind of looks I'm getting from my dogs. They're just like, she's finally lost it. We knew it would happen someday. Okay, so let's do category close. No, actually, let's do category first. Okay, let me double check this really quick. Oh, nope, we need category close first. Okay, category close. Okay, we're going to do display flex. Once again, we're turning on that flex system. We're opening up a whole new world of possibilities. Let's put it all in one line. If you remember right, putting it all on one line means they are now technically inline block. Okay, we're going to say our flex direction is row. We'll justify content and center it and align items. I don't know if I already told you this, but align items allows you to have that vertical centering. That's what we're doing when we say align items, if you were curious. So that's setting up our category close container. I also don't know if I mentioned it, but inside Sass, we are able to nest our class names for things. So category container, category close, category container, category close, rather than doing it. Makes more sense visually because you know that this div is inside this div, and Sass is going to take and break this down for us and make that. So when we go into here, you'll see we've got category container, category close, just like I wrote out, but Sass is doing that work for us. And when we look at it in here, we can see that this visually makes more sense because it's exactly written like our HTML is. So if you were wondering why I was doing that, this is a trick in Sass that I forgot to explain ahead of time. Please forgive me, this is my first video. So we're also going to do category, and once again, we're going to set the display to flex. We're going to justify the content and center it, align items and center it. Okay, and once again, this is centering it based on the container. This is centering it vertically based on the container. Okay, we're going to set the width to 100% because we want it to fill. And let me just show you what that did. See that? It said, take up the space. And then we're going to give it some height here. And I'm going to say about 350 pixels. Okay. You could get a little bit fancy here and you could say like, I want this to be, say, 25 view height, which is going to be based then on how big your view is. I want it to be 50 view height. And it's going to scroll a little bit, or I want it to be 40 view height. It's going to be a little bit less all the time. So it should never end up creating a scroll unless it's really tiny. So if you wanted to be fancy, that is an option. I'm just going to set it to a static 350 pixels, but I wanted to show you that that's an option. I generally like setting the height to something static, especially if you have your width as something flexible. I think it works best when you're doing flexible layouts if you set one element as something static and one element as something flexible. If you have too much that's flexible, you end up getting things that break more easily. It's not doable. It just is more difficult to work with. So expect more problems if you're setting everything to be flexible. Just know that. You have your height flexible, if you have your width flexible both at the same time, you're going to have more problems. So, okay, now we're going to do, and this is where it gets a little bit fun. Okay. So, category tops. Oops, forgot my dot. Okay, so we're going to pull in some background images. Okay, first, new folder. And this is where you are going to have to download these background images from GitHub, or you can just download some images of your own. I mean, no reason why you can't. I'm going to copy these and pop them in here. And these are all just from pexels.com. They're all free stock images. You can go in and type hats and search. It's a great resource. And look, you got hats. I mean, it's super easy, right? How cool is that? I totally should have used that image. I don't know why I didn't use that image. That's a great image. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going. Okay. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna set, I'm gonna teach you some cool tricks with the background image too here. Okay. Background image, URL. If you don't know how to set a background image, well, keep up. You now know how to set a background image, okay? It's literally just URL. That's it, okay? Let me make sure I type that in right. URL tops, okay. Category tops, did I get that in there right? See if my live server's tripping out. Did I break something? No problems have been detected. Expect this. I did expect to see the background pop up in case you're wondering. So let me see what's happening really quick. If I've missed setting something. Failed to load a resource. Oh, well, that would explain it. The issue. Oh, I see the issue. I missed a letter. There's somebody sitting on the other side of their screen going, "You missed a letter. How could you miss?" Okay, it's fine. It's fine. I got it. It's fine. Okay, now what you're gonna see is we don't see our pretty image, and it really is a very pretty image. So, I mean, look at this. We don't want all of that brick to just show, and not this really cool woman who is wearing this awesome outfit and has this great hair and just looks like she's cooler than I could ever aspire to be. So the question is, how do we get this background image aligned? And we're going to do that next. So I'm going to show you some really cool tricks. So the first thing that we are going to do, is we're going to set the background size. Now we could say literally 500 pixels. You can set it directly. You can see it's even tiling, and you could say like background repeat, no repeat. And it would cut it off, and then you'd be like, well, now it has to be bigger, but CSS is a built-in function that just makes this easier for us, okay? We know that we want the background image to fill the screen. So we can literally just say background size cover. And it's going to automatically set it to fill the div until it crops, or fill the div so that it crops. We could also do, if we look at this, background size, pop up my tips, please. There we go. Okay, we could do cover or contain or auto. So auto is what we saw before with the giant bricks. So if we do contain, then you'll see that what it's going to do is it's going to scale it down so that it fits within without cropping. So if you don't want it to crop, that's what's going to be your trick there. We can also, there is a way to stretch it. Let me see if I remember how to do this. I think it's, is it 100%? There we go. Okay, so if you ever have an image that is more abstract, like a solid shape, and you literally just want it to fill a screen, like say, let me see if I've got this on my, I have these abstract shapes right in here, and I wanted them to grow taller as the div got taller, and I set them to 100%, 100%. So these are literally stretching. This green one here is literally stretching based on the size of the div. If there's more text in here, these will just grow. They will stretch out without breaking this border, without ending up overlapping. Same with this one. I made it stretch those images. So if you ever have something that's a little more abstract, that's the trick for that. But for us, we're going to use cover. And what you're going to see is she's like shoved off to the side, and that's not what we want, because once again, she's like a really cool person that is like what I aspire to be. So we're just going to use the background position property. And you can see we could set it manually, but in this case, it's just really easy to just say center. And look at how great that is. It's like, it's also responsive centering. So when this grows, she's still going to say centered, which is awesome. Okay, so we're going to do this for all of our other. Okay, so we're going to say tops, we got bottoms, we got hats, we got accessories, bottoms, hats, accessories. Okay, it's really easy to just fill these in. And what you're going to notice is that none of these really position perfectly. So there we go. Okay, none of these really position perfectly, except for maybe this bottom one is fine. So we can go in and we can manually adjust these. This one I might say, you could say right. and then look, it like shoves it off to the right. We could say 90%, maybe 85%. Look at that. Isn't that like so much better? We could say the bottoms one. This one gets a little bit trickier for me because it could stay like this, but like the more we stretch it out this way, the more those pants get cropped off. And if this is featuring bottoms, then probably we want it moved up a little bit more. So we could say 70%. And what we're saying is we want it centered and then we want it bumped up a little bit. We want it bumped 70%, maybe 80%. And that gives us a little more, maybe 70. Just depends on where you want it. I'm fine with the base getting cropped off because this is supposed to be a clothing website. So we're featuring the pants. That's what they should see no matter what. It's more important that the pants stay in the frame. Anyway, let's keep it moving. So right now it's not really very visible to see. Sorry, my computer's having a hard time keeping up with this when I'm recording at the same time. It's not really very visible to see the text. So we're going to add a little bit of an overlay. So you'll remember we have a container category header around our H1, and we're going to use that to style it. Category header. And we're just going to add, I'm going to add a little more padding to this, so I'm not going to use my default padding. And I'm going to add a little bit of a white overlay, I think. Oops. Background color, RGB A. Make sure to add that A in there or it will get you. Color. Here on me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. Alpha. You might notice that this is more of a Sass syntax for this. Okay. See, this makes it a little easier to see, but now we see that somebody entered the HTML in here really weird, and we don't want to go in and change all of that. We just want these all to be uppercase, right? Wonder what weirdo did that. So there is a property in CSS called text transform. And we can say uppercase. Look at that. So easy, right? We could, I don't know if this will work, but let's just try it. Let's try lowercase and then who knows if this will work. It will not work. Okay. So this one overrides this one. They don't combine together. But we can make these all uppercase like this, and it fixes the bad formatting that was in there. And you can see we've now got a super responsive layout that's working here. I wanted to show you another thing, a really fun thing that, because a lot of us out here are not designers, right? So we might not have access to great photo editors. There's still a lot you can do with CSS, right? The filter property, for example, like there's a lot of color happening here and they're not all harmonious. Like this one's more muted, this one's warm, this one's got some different levels of saturation happening, and this one's really bright. And I picked really conflicting images is because I wanted to do this. Okay, filter, grayscale, 100%. Look at that. And just like that, it all looks a little bit better. We could also probably get away with this last one would probably have to be a little more saturated because it already didn't have a lot of color. And what you'll find is you can kind of manipulate them so that even though none of these colors really match, now they all kind of look like they're in the same family because they've all been desaturated a lot, and it kind of pushes them back. So you don't have all of this jumping out craziness happening. So just a little tip for you. So I'm going to set this to 100%. This way it just looks like what I showed you before. So we will do another video later. We're going to get some hovers happening on these. I think I'm actually going to do a hover so that these colors light up. I actually think that would be really easy to do. Try this really quick. I haven't tried this yet, so you know, it might not work. Who knows? Look at that. That's nicer. Okay, well, actually, we're going to do the hover on this one right away because it looks so nice. Look at that. I'm just having fun now, guys. Bottoms. I have to go in and add this to my original project and make a commit. Accessories. Look at that. Oh, we gotta, this one's gotta be bumped up because it has no color to begin with. Seriously? How did I spell this wrong? There we go. Let me see. Oh. I went the wrong direction. It's gotta be even lower. The accessories image is way grayed back, so. Ooh, way grayed back. Let's take it way down. There we go. That's starting to get closer. Might take it down to 20. There we go. That's better. Okay. So you can see that looks really nice. I think I'm actually going to add some more hovers because I'm really into this. This is fun. Okay, let's see our headers. And this is super easy. It's literally just hover. Okay, so we're going to say, I like this. Okay. Size 15 pixels. Let's see how that looks. Now it's got to be big. Make it big. That might be a little too big. You know what? Let's try this. You might be able to get away with combining these. Yes. Okay, so if you're wondering, I moved these to the category accessories hover because it just makes it significantly easy, which means we can actually put it in category. So try this. That category hover font size 20 pixels. There we go. You could also probably get rid of all of these. Maybe. Let's see. Category tops. I'm going to see if this works. Yes. Okay. Condensing our code. Make it dry. Do not repeat. We're going to get rid of all of these so that we only have one hover that affects them all. It's the one ring to rule them all, guys. I'm up way too late. Look at that. Oh, and you can see this isn't affecting the category accessories because, so we're going to have to add that one back at least. There we go. That's fine. We got one to rule most. There we go. Well, okay, we're gonna cut this off. Obviously, I'm just goofing off now, but we're gonna do a lot more with this at another time. I'm going to make the snap bar all pretty. We're gonna get some JavaScript in there. We're gonna get this collapsing to a hamburger menu. I want to add some transitions to these so that they don't just snap. They're going to transition, right? Grow and shrink. But I hope this is helpful. It really shows how powerful Flexbox is for layouts. And at some point I want to do another layout tutorial that shows you how to incorporate grid with Flexbox. So I'm sorry, I know I am a bit of a rambler. I hope this helped though.